Hey guys, this is Mowsen here, and welcome to the Legacy Podcast, episode 9. In today's episode, we teamed up with Caperfin and Necrush, and we're talking about some special specs and things in WoW Classic, something out of the ordinary, if you want. We're talking about the Shaman Tank for the Horde side, because Caperfin is actually playing a Shaman Tank and will play the Shaman Tank when release hits, and so I thought that's really interesting. I've never really seen that. There have been a couple of rumors that the Shaman Tank was supposed to be in the game, but we're going to dive into that. There's also a lot of info about Prot Paladins in there, and at the end we're going to talk about another like meme spec. You really have to say meme spec, the Warlock Tank, and what it's for, and it has its fair use, but yeah. See for yourself. We're gonna jump into the intro, and yeah, I hope you guys enjoy. Alright guys, welcome to the Legacy Podcast, episode 9, and with me today is, of course, like always, Necrush. Hello. Hello. And we got a special guest today, and he is going to tell us a lot about basically other tanking specs. He said he could talk for hours about other specs tanking. So welcome, Caperfin.
Hey guys, thanks for having me.
Yeah, man. Of course, we wanted to do this for a while, and you're supposed to sell us to the Shaman Tank tonight, or today, and I hope you will.
Yeah, it'll be my pleasure.
All right, cool. Yeah, just, I mean, we know Necrush by now. We're going to start with the topic of regional servers today. But why don't you just, introduce yourself a little bit and tell people where they can find your stuff if they're also crazy and want to play Shaman Tank? Because you're actually doing it, right? Like, I played the Prot Paladin here, and you're actually playing Shaman Tank, as I heard. So
yeah.
Go ahead.
My name is Caperfin. I usually go by Caper as a kind of short name. I'm known around the community for my Shaman Tank guide. Not only that, but I also like to explore more conventional DPS specs, how people can improve their healing, tanking, whatever it is. I like to delve into the kind of weird parts of World of Warcraft. Most of these weird parts are kind of things that people don't really understand, or there's so little information behind it, and I try to bring that up. I try to make the impossible possible, if you will.
Right. Yeah. And it's certainly true. I mean, the Shaman Tank has been we'll talk about it in a minute, but I mean, it's always been a thing that people thought Blizzard had intended. And we can talk about that later, but it's definitely interesting, and I also checked the talent trees and everything, and I'm going to put them in the video so people can follow on that. And yeah, but first, today in this episode, first of all, we're back from the summer break. Had a lot of shit going on. Necrush, what's been happening for you, man? Got a new apartment, I heard.
Yeah, I got cleared 2 days ago for a new apartment, so I'm moving in the 15th of August. So when summer ends, I finally get my own place. Yeah,
but you have that fixed for Classic.
Yeah, exactly.
Good. So you can. I hope it's just a one bedroom apartment, so you can have like your fridge and everything right next to the computer, so you don't have to get up. Attach a poop sock to your ass, and then you don't have to get up. Good.
I have a balcony, so poop's over there.
Yeah,
it's a one-room university student kind of place.
Excellent.
Which is really cool. It's right next to the university, so
it's good. So you don't need to clean up the bathroom, right?
Yes.
So less time wasted for that. You can.
You got people for that.
Right. Yeah. I hope everybody's excited for 27th of August, the release, and there were some big news regarding the regional servers for anybody that's not actually native English speakers, such as all of us. Caper, what's your plan for release official? What guild you're moving with? what servers, what region, what are your plans in general? Will it be the Shaman Tank or Warlock Tank?
Oh, yeah. I'm going Shaman Tanks. There are a few Shaman Tanks out there who are kind of competing to get world first Shaman Tank boss. So there's a kind of a challenge among
there's a challenge going
Shaman
on.
Tanks out there to get world first, right?
Shit,
whether it be Stratholme first or MC first. So yeah, that'll be a bit challenging. Afterwards, I plan to have an alt where I will be playing a Warlock, and I will be raid tanking as well. I will be playing on the American servers at first. As a French player, as a French speaker, eventually I will transition to the European servers so I can talk to my French fans.
All right, cool. So as I said, Caper is a bit crazy, right? So for anybody that plays, what's a good DPS class, and they go with Rogue. For all of those, you are crazy. So you actually want to raid tank with a Warlock?
Yes, a lot of people say Warlocks can tank. This is mostly from people who don't really put the time to figure out if they can actually tank. But if you go down into the math, you follow my guide. I have a Warlock raid tank guide. It goes very much into the best in slot gear you can get. And you can see for yourself that indeed their defensive stats can come quite close to an actual Feral Druid. Not relatively close. Obviously, a Warlock raid tank is not as good as a Feral Druid, but you can get way higher on the raiding content ladder than most people think.
Okay. And that's, as I said, it's really interesting. And, first, some people might brush this off as, well, yeah, sure. But it's actually interesting getting into it and talking a little bit about it. So let's dive into the regional servers first, because that's definitely been the topic of the week. So for me, I wasn't really surprised when Blizzard changed their minds. So for anybody that doesn't know yet, first, or a couple of weeks ago, or days ago, Blizzard said there won't be any regional servers for, let's say, France or French speakers, or German servers for anything, Austria, Germany, etc. And Oceanic is the same, I believe. And there was something else. What was it? But you get the idea though. So because usually from release of the game in 2005, there were German servers and French servers. I think those two were the first ones.
Yep.
Yeah, and then later they added Spanish servers and Italian ones. Now, as I understood, there are no Spanish servers, there are no Italian servers, right?
No.
Yeah, only French, German, and Oceanic. So they added the Oceanic region, which is good, I think.
Yeah, it's a bit unconventional to add the Oceanic servers so early into the game, but yeah, it's good to see some representation from there.
Right, because when we played here on several servers, what you could always see is people from Australia or what else is Oceanic? Isn't that Hawaii, right? New Zealand. All those dudes, they would have to raid in the middle of the night, basically. And even if they were raiding with American guilds, it was still like a really big difference to their actual time zone. So I'm happy, and they've always, no one really had them on their radar, right? It was I always feel like nobody really cared for the tribe of the Oceanic people, right?
Yeah, there was not that much of an effort to make the Oceanic servers possible. It was through just years and years of trying to make it work.
Exactly, yeah. So glad for them, because now they can actually raid on a normal time schedule, I guess. So that's great.
And also with normal ping.
And normal ping, yeah, true.
Yeah, one of the big reasons why you never saw Australians in your NA guilds is that they just couldn't raid with 300, 400 MS ping from Australia. So they even made a custom private server only for Australia called Nostralia, I think.
Yep. Oh yeah, true.
So and that was actually pretty populated, I think.
True, yeah, I saw that somewhere. Well, excellent. I think, why don't you tell me, or Caper or Necrosh, either one of you, what do you think of this decision? Do you think it's a good decision that they made French or German servers?
I mean, it's kind of sad that we had to resort to posting stuff on the forums to get Blizzard's attention to make these servers. But I'm happy in the end they made it possible. As a French speaker, yeah, this I couldn't be more happier. Just the way it was approached, resorting to forums, I don't really like that. I don't know about you guys, but it should be quite obvious for Blizzard to make servers not just for English, but
Yeah, I was pretty confused at first about the whole outrage, because the people I met from Germany and France and so on, they all speak very good English, and the meme that they don't speak English at all, it can't be true, at least not in gaming. But someone told me that if you try to just have a conversation with someone, that is really difficult in English for them, and that's a big thing of Classic. So yeah. And I think that's a very valid reason to have these French servers and German servers, because they want to have casual conversation in their own language and be competent in that. And so therefore I think it's really good that they actually got their own server.
Yeah, I would agree. Just really quick, Caperfin, can you turn down your headphones or whatever it is, because we have like a little feedback.
No problem.
We can the volume.
Okay.
So yeah, I agree. I think it's still there. I don't know. Maybe you can turn it down a little bit more.
How about now?
Should be fine.
Okay.
Yeah. So I agree. The problem is that with my biggest point was for World of Warcraft is this is supposed to be like a live world, right? It's still there, Caper, so maybe a bit more even. I don't know what it is. Maybe the microphone picks up the volume from your headphones.
Perhaps.
So it's supposed to be like a live world, and you want to be around there and you want to talk to people. That's kind of like the biggest point, right? And if you are not a native speaker and you don't really speak English, then that would be a huge problem for you, because you can already see on certain P servers where there are Chinese people at some time of the day, and you can just see that you can't really communicate with them, and it really sucks because they just post this bubble with nothing in there, and you just feel like, okay, this is a completely different time zone and a completely different. It's a weird experience for you if you can't. And there's really, like with China, it's so crazy apart from each other that you have even the words are different, and they can't really not even try to communicate in a way that they just give you signs, or it's just so different that it doesn't work anymore. It's hard with Russia already because the English there is very broken. And I was actually surprised, one more thing, that they didn't want to make German and French servers. I really thought that would be obvious to me, that they would bring out French, German servers, Spanish servers, because they used to say back in the day 8 servers per region. I thought, well, obviously, an official Classic back in the day in 2005, there were French, German servers, so obviously that's gonna come here for Classic. But I was very, very surprised, and I already knew that there would be such a big backlash on the forums that they would basically cave in and say, okay, look, here's your servers.
The thread, I think the first thread about the response capped out in a couple of hours.
Really? Yeah.
Yeah, it went that fast. And if you go through it, I think about half of it is in German. Like they don't write in English; they write in German.
Yeah.
And then there's maybe 20% that is written in French, and then next to nothing in Spanish and so on. But it was just strange to see this. Like they just use their own language, but pretty funny to see.
I'm actually surprised that there isn't, or that there are not going to be Spanish servers. I mean, if you think about it.
There will be.
There will be, you think?
Yeah. There's already a big outrage. It's just a matter of time.
If you think so, yeah. Yeah, could be. I mean, if you look at it, so many people are actually native Spanish speakers, obviously. And but yeah. As I said, I was gone, so I just noticed this when somebody linked it, which is interesting because I didn't really notice it until it actually happened. So yeah, so good for the French, the Germans, because I also thought that it shouldn't be such a big problem. For us, it's not really a big deal anyway, but because we were going to go on English servers in any case. But I just realized again that there's so many people in other countries that they don't really speak English, or they don't want to speak English in their free time. You got to look at it from a different perspective as well. I think Blizzard thought that at their headquarters, well, most people speak English, right? So what's the big deal? They can just play on one server. But I think that they were really underestimating that. Everybody kind of speaks the basic English, right? But if you really want to communicate with a lot of people in your free time in a thing that's supposed to be a big world where you interact with people all the time, I think that's not what people are looking for. And I think that, like in your free time, you don't want to necessarily speak English if you're not really crazy good at it, right?
Yeah.
It's like, I'm always imagining I'm good at English, but I'm not really, I suck at Spanish, for example. So imagine you would have to, in your free time, there would only be Spanish servers, and you would have to kind of look up words all the time.
But it's also weird because if you look at, for instance, StarCraft 2, that game has been translated into so many languages. I mean, it's in Korean, it's in Chinese, it's in English, of course, it's in Russian, it's Spanish, German, Portuguese, I believe, or Brazilian. I mean, it's so many languages, and that's StarCraft 2. You don't really communicate in that game, except for, maybe a GL. Good luck, have fun. But in WoW, this is a game, especially vanilla WoW, is a game that is based on the community and being able to communicate with each other. So it's really strange that they would sort of lump everybody together like that.
Yeah.
I consider it kind of a faux pas from Blizzard. They're already known for their kind of disconnection with their community, especially what's happening in retail. I see this as a big loss for Blizzard.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, it's good to have some, critical voices. Now you're a little quiet again, Caper. It all worked in the sound check, but you guys know how it is, right? You guys know how it is.
Yeah, the curse of the content creator.
Exactly.
Constantly changing volumes.
Yeah.
But Caperfin, you're playing on North American servers, right?
Yes.
How will that work with the NA servers? Will they also be grouped in with the South American players?
I don't believe so. I'm going to be switching between servers, but yes, most of my time is going to be on North America.
Mm-hmm. So,
because that would also be a thing, right? Because it's a lot of Spanish people or Spanish speaking people and Brazilian, Portuguese. If they also get lumped in with NA, with the Americans and the Canadians, that might also be an issue.
That's what I thought. Like if you're looking at it in other games, there's only international servers, so that also has some advantages, right? Because if you look at it, the problem is always the interaction with other people that aren't in your guild. So you could say, or what people were planning already was, okay, hey, French people, let's go all on this one particular server, and all Germans go on, I don't know, Kill Jaden Classic, whatever. And we make small communities there and have our own guilds. That would also work. Because I remember, I actually recently checked Albion Online again on streams. And that's also all international, and you kind of form guilds in your language if you want to be in a native thing. So it's also possible.
One of the biggest EVE guilds was Russian.
Yeah, isn't that all
EVE Online
international as well? RuneScape?
Yes, it's only one server. There's one server for every player as one universe.
Yeah, the same for Albion,
Yeah, and the countries sort of take territory for themselves. So there was an alliance called Test, I believe, which I think they are Russian. And so they also like banded together. But in the end, like when the alliance was really big, it wasn't really Russian anymore. but still headquartered by Russians. So
I just need to refill my coffee here real quick. Yeah, what do you think of international servers, Caper? Because it's still interesting for anybody that's not French and German now.
Typically, I'm not for these type of echo chambers. So to clump up everyone in an international, honestly, I have to think about it more
because right now only the French and the Germans have their own kind of bubbles now, which is cool for them because, as I said, especially in France and Germany, I think there are more people that don't really speak English all that well, or they don't, aren't as good at it to communicate, freely and on a daily basis in their free time. That's what I mean. In Scandinavia, for example, it looks a little bit different, I would say. It's not such a big deal for them.
Yeah,
so,
we speak very good English.
Yeah, except for you. But I mean, yeah, that's But like for example, Italy, Italian people, what are they going to do? They're still going to be on international servers. So the topic isn't really off the table just because the Germans and French got their own servers now, right?
Oh, are you under the assumption that even if these servers are actually implemented, everyone will go to the international server?
No, I'm just saying like the French, the Germans are going to be mostly on their own servers, but everybody else, right? What about them? I mean, for them, it's all still international servers, so it's a kind of a weird mix. You two, you get your own servers, but everybody else, you got to stay in the international ones. You're saying Spanish people or Spanish-speaking people will get their own eventually. That's your assumption, and Oceanic get their own, of course. Yeah. We already forgot about the Oceanic again. Jeez, you just always forget about those people.
Own little corner.
It's the other side of the world, man.
Yeah,
it's a tough life. So I don't know. What do you guys think? I mean, the best tip that I can give for if you're, I don't know, you're a bunch of Italian dudes, right? And you want to play together, just pick a server and all communicate in your forums, all Italian servers, people on this server, and then you have a small community there. But I mean, yeah.
That was also something people were pretty scared about, like the English speaking people of Europe, that these Germans and French and whatever would just pile up on one server.
Yeah.
And if you chose that server, that would be really bad. And
it's a bad thing when Germans and French people pile up on one server next to each other. You know what happens next, right? It's not good. So it's good to have them separated. Right?
Poor Belgians.
Yeah, exactly. Brodolf and his crew. We'll have 8 Belgians in our guild. So.
Yeah.
But yeah. I hope they're coming now. Shit, we don't know. Anyway.
But the thing about international servers, well, at least on like private servers, is that you get to meet people from all over the world.
That's true.
I met friends from the US, even Russia, Ukraine, Brazil. Like my favorite mage in the guild is Brazilian.
Volker?
Volker. And like all these people you meet from all over the world, which sort of gives you an insight into, you become a little bit of a globetrotter in a way by talking to people from all over the world. And that's amazing. And I will miss that on Classic. So it's a thing on private servers, though, I really like, but obviously this can't carry over on Classic.
Yeah, I mean...
It has its disadvantages, of course.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, for you, it's going to be... I don't know, is it more interesting for you, Caper? Because NA servers are just basically going to be NA because it's so big. And
yeah, as a content creator, it makes more sense to be on the NA, a wider exposure to a wider audience.
Do you think? Because yeah, it's something I just think about every day, right? If I should just switch to German completely, because sure, you'd have less reach exposure, but possible exposure, but you're also like in a more narrow market. So
true. Yep.
Yeah, no, it's interesting.
Depends on your business approach, but yeah.
Depends, yeah. Cool. Okay, so I think it's still it was let's go back to you were a little bit more critical towards Blizzard. You said it was a bad move, and you didn't like the approach that people would have to go and cry on the forums and then they change something, because that in the past has been not really a really good approach to anything for Blizzard. And you were talking about a disconnect there.
Yeah, I believe this is Blizzard's second mistake. I think the content phase as well was something that was brought up on the forums first, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And then eventually Blizzard said, oh, okay, we'll go with the content phases. We'll clump up this. But yeah, it sucks that we had to resort to posting on the forums. And here we go a second time with this server thing. So, man, it's not looking good for Blizzard. Honestly, it's sad that we have to point this out. It should be super obvious. I mean, logically, it would be a business, kind of the financial backing, because every decision you do as a business, you have to weigh the pros and cons. So that's a big indicator as well.
So you're saying it was logical that they were trying to just put everything on one server?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Reduce server costs. I mean, yeah, every business should put money, profits ahead of everything else. But to make it so glaringly apparent, yeah.
Yeah, but exactly, just not that apparent. And when it was really clear that people wanted their own servers, I would agree. Yeah. There have been a couple of things, and maybe we can talk shortly, and then we can jump into the Shaman Tank, but or any tank really. There were, what do you think for a classic coming up? Do you think there are gonna be more of these situations occurring where they try to, just kind of, we say in Germany, they just try to sweep it under the carpet, right? Like an issue comes up and they just say, yeah, we plan to do this like this to reduce costs, but everybody would know, okay, look, this is going to be, this has to be this way, and they're just trying to, not speak of it very much and try to get away with it, because this was clearly a
I think the AQ event will probably be a pretty big risk. Like it could go really well, or it could be completely disastrous. I mean, it was completely disastrous during retail vanilla, and I think this might be even worse. But it might also be much better. We don't really know. But I think it's a big risk. We'll see how it works.
Are you referring to the server crashing of having so many people in one zone, or?
Yeah.
For example, what are they going to do with it? You know what I mean? Like, do you think there are going to be more situations where Blizzard could try to just take the easy route out and compromise the vanilla experience, kind of?
Ooh, I mean, what I would do is, I don't exactly know how these servers work, but I would maybe spend a bit more money just for these few days of AQ opening, just because there will be a lot of people in one place at one time. Yeah, that's kind of my opinion. Unfortunately, as much as we advance in technology, it seems Blizzard still has problems with servers and population.
That's what I thought, man. Yeah, that's what I thought too. I thought I understand that they want to reduce server costs. I understand that they wanted to do that in 2005, but it's 2019 now, and I mean, geez, what's going on? It's Blizzard, after all.
They are using the cloud technology, though, so it should be fairly easy to just assign more resources to the servers and keep them up. So I think it is certainly possible to have thousands and thousands and thousands of people in Silithus, because we've seen it on private servers. I think Blizzard could pull it off, but if they want to or not, that's a big
that's
question.
What I meant. Yeah, and I mean, shit, I forgot what I wanted to say. It's just, they're making Diablo Mobile, right? So they should have enough money soon, right?
Yeah.
Oh, that's another faux pas on Blizzard's disconnect with the public. Oh boy, I forgot about that.
Yeah. At least with their fans, let's put it that way, because the market is huge. It makes sense for them to dig into it, but the way they approached it was just, trying to sell tell it to their old school fans that were clearly playing on a computer. It's just crazy.
Do you remember Fallout 4 when that was announced? I think it was E3 or something like that. But Todd Howard went out in the scene and he presented all that stuff. But like before he started, he introduced the mobile game, which I can't remember the name. It was like Fallout Shelter or something like that.
Yeah.
But that's how they should have done it with Diablo Immortal. Like, okay, so we're doing Diablo 4.
Yeah, but this
Here's
is just
some stuff. But we are also doing this thing for the mobile to hold you over, sort of thing, right?
But this is just
that's
like
how
a
they should
mini
have
game.
done it.
Yeah, I agree. Man, so much to talk about, but shit. Blizzard, man. Blizzard.
Yeah. Back on the whole AQ event,
Sure.
They're going to go with layering. That's for sure. I have 100%.
Good that you bring that up.
Yeah, they're going to go for layering for every big event. So whether it be AQ or a release of a raid, they're going to do that. They're going to go layering for sure. There's no doubt.
You know, how will that work with the world bosses? Because they specifically said that we can't have layering when the world bosses are out, because we can't have people skipping from layers to get the world bosses. So are they also going to do, like with the 4 Nightmare Dragons, for instance? Like, how would that work?
There seems to be a cooldown on this, right? When I read it right, that there's like a cooldown on skipping from layer to layer. So you can't just keep skipping, which is already a good thing. But people are going to be very triggered about this whole layering. I mean, layering is probably the word that I can't hear anymore, because people are just talking so much about it on stream. Yeah. It's just, I get the idea, but if you hear it every day and you just get so tired of it, and of course it's shit. They should just get rid of it. But they will always come to you with the excuse of, we need to save resources. It's not possible, which is bullshit. But yeah. Layering, man. It's another of these things. I don't know, man. It's you should not be able to just phase somewhere else. This should not be there. Like, I think everybody would agree, right? Caper, what do you think? I don't know.
I mean, yeah, you can exploit the game with layering, but I do see where they're coming from. I would understand having layering just for the first few weeks, but having it after that, I don't agree with that at all.
Yeah,
they need to remove it ASAP.
Yeah, that's what they tried to say, right? And that's exactly what I said a couple of months ago. They will try, or my fear was that they would say, okay, we're just gonna have layering in for the first couple of weeks, and then we'll not use it anymore. But now they're just trying to like slide it in, right? Yeah. Just kind of let it flow into the game, because the word's being brought up so much. And my fear is that in the end we'll have we'll have layering exactly on those events, like AQ40 release, or stupid things like you can't even think of yet, which in the real thing will result in anybody still got a layering cooldown X in chat, right? Ooh, and then you ask like your raid, everybody keep your layering cooldowns because we want to go and check for world bosses later.
The layering mafia.
Yeah, something like that. Just I don't know. It shouldn't be in the game, man. I think it really ruins it. But
one thing to consider with the AQ event is that Hesychostas was a pretty hardcore raider. Ian Hesychostas, for those who don't know, is like the project leader or whatever for WoW, and also Classic. And he's a big influencer on Classic, anyways. And he did raid AQ, and he has so many fond memories of this. He spoke at length of AQ event being one of his favorite memories from Vanilla. So I have this feeling that he wouldn't want layering to ruin it for people, because if you enter Silithus and you're getting phased all over the place, that would really ruin the show for so many people. So I kind of, at least I hope that he sort of knows this, and he will do all he can to not have layering on that event. Mm-hmm. At least I hope so.
Hope. Any final thoughts on the regional servers? Otherwise, I'd say we move on to the tank.
I believe that's all on my part.
I mean, we can all agree that it's a good move. They should have done it from the start.
Mm-hmm.
They should keep layering out, and they should avoid more, trying to save a little bit of cost at some point, and for the sake of, or with the result of, fucking over the community again.
I mean, yeah, they should have approached it with having the servers at first and then looking at the numbers and saying, hey guys, there's not many people. We might be closing the servers. Throw out a poll out there, see how many people are playing, how many people are interested in it, and then make the decision to delete the servers or transfer.
Great. Okay. Yeah, interesting. I mean, it's as you can see, you can talk about all of this stuff for hours, man. It's just crazy. But we want to keep it a little bit more compact than the last episodes, bring out more and keep it more compact. I mean, there will be enough topics to talk about all the time. So another thing that arose quite a while ago, and we'll transition into the tank stuff, was because I want to have this like as a background for the discussion. I don't know if you saw the thread, Caper, but they were just basically discussing about hit rating, what the cap is, what the real cap is, and all that, and miss chances and all that. And there was a blue post that said, well, from a reference client and the client we're working on, raid bosses will have 14% parry rating. Did you read about that?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. What's your
big shot?
Yeah, I want to use that as like a background for the discussion that's coming up. Sure. And first of all, what are your thoughts on that? Do you think it's right? What do you think will result from it? And so, because this is going to be interesting for only for tanks, because okay, for melee as well, but melee can just go behind the boss and you don't have that problem. But you can't just tank it from behind, guys. So for tanks, this is a really huge issue that you have 14% parry on a boss. It's like, it's like spell hit. All of a sudden for raid bosses, it's 17% spell hit cap, right? And so, yeah. What's your thoughts?
I don't really know how every single private server has missed this. Maybe there's just not enough evidence out there on the internet. No one was cataloging this, but something as simple as parry chance on a boss, it's hard to imagine no one noticed
so much.
This.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't want to say Blizzard is lying, or maybe, I don't know.
I was very surprised, too.
In terms of 14% and tanks, yeah, a lot of tanks will need to adjust their numbers, whether it be changing the priority on stats. Yeah, it's good. Actually, it's good and it's bad. It kind of makes the theory crafting a bit more interesting. Yeah.
And the game harder.
Yeah, harder or easier. It's hard to tell at this point. Whether Warcraft Classic in general is getting harder or easier to theory craft.
One thing I can throw in maybe is that for anybody that doesn't know, because I didn't know this for a while, and when like there's a combat, there's combat and you parry an attack, then the swing timer on your next auto attack is halved, I think. So that's parry haste. That's called parry haste. So, of course, this leads to a bigger problem, which could, could be an explanation why Classic felt so much harder back in the day, and tanks were dying to all of this stuff, and because this will obviously result in 14% parry will result in a lot of parry haste from bosses onto your tank. So, the tank tries to hit it, he parries and gives you a quicker next auto attack, and he parries again and another one, right? And they can all crit obviously if you're not crit capped yet. And so there's a lot more damage coming in on the tanks as well, and it's harder to hit it, which just it will make it. There will be more damage on the tanks for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised to see maybe a different kind of priority when it comes to gear. Maybe stamina is more important, or armor or whatnot. Armor, I don't see it being a problem for warrior tanks because they are the gods of tanking. But for anything below warrior, it's going to need a bit of switching in terms of stats.
But I thought it's only affecting the warrior because from what I read, Feral attacks can't be parried. And that was
No. You're correct.
Yeah, and so, that's how I understand it. We'll have to see, but how I understand it is that attacks from animals can't be parried, and from the feral, the boss can't parry them, which would make feral tanks pretty good or better.
Yeah, I usually associate the whole sword with parrying. You can't really parry a claw. It doesn't make sense. Yeah. Fantasy-wise.
Yeah. If that's going to be the case, we don't know yet, but maybe people can let us know in comments or whatever. But that's what I heard, that the feral tank is going to be buffed with that, because he has 14% of his attacks, right? You have 100 attacks, but the chance of 14% is completely off the charts, because the boss can't parry them. I don't know if that's true. Necrosh, do you know anything?
Nothing at all.
You're just a warlock, right?
Yeah, I do know something about Warlock tanking, though.
Yeah, we'll get into that.
I read Caperfin's guide a while ago.
Yeah. Nice.
Pretty funny. I didn't know it was you until you told it was you. So pretty funny.
See, it's a small world. Yeah. All right, so, but 14% parry. So what my thoughts on this, this is why we want to talk about more different tank specs, because we never know what's going to happen, and it's definitely an interesting topic. Also Prot Paladin, because I've been going in that direction. You're like the horde side, and that's a spell damage tank, right? And he doesn't care about parry so much either. So it could potentially buff those two, Feral and Prot Paladin, and maybe the Shaman Tank too.
Yes.
One thing I know, though, is that if you're doing dual wield Fury, you will, like, the parry resets the boss attack.
Yeah, that's parry
attack speed, right? The swing thing. So if you're dual wielding and you get lots of parries, of course you will get hit for a lot more, and you're already taking more damage. Yeah, so potentially Fury dual wielding will be even more dangerous than it already is.
Yeah, I think so.
I see maybe one or two buffs leaning more towards survival instead of DPS. Okay.
What do you mean?
Like, for example, just throwing it out there, instead of Battle Shout, you would need Power Word Fortitude for staying alive as a dual wield Fury.
Yeah, the question is that enough?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's just an example.
Because you're already missing so much armor, and if the boss is parrying so much or so many attacks, you will just get parry hasted to death, really, with the already less armor you have or fewer armor you have. But those are details. I mean, this is definitely something to consider. I just don't get where they got that 14% parry from all of a sudden.
Caught me off guard, honestly.
Yeah, me too. It's just crazy. It just seems such an odd number.
We've had hundreds of private servers comb through YouTube videos and backlogs, and no one has ever found this.
Archives.
Website archives.
Yeah.
Would be interesting to know what they're basing their actual number on, though. Because they obviously must have set it to, 9% or whatever. Like, they must have set it to that because something. They must have some evidence behind it. It would be interesting to see what that is. Like,
they have an old version of they have an actual classic version that they compare everything to and do the testing on, and then they tune the new version to that, basically. And apparently that was the case in the original game, 14% parry. And I mean, technically it would make sense, because for casters, all of a sudden, if a target is 3 levels above, the spell hit cap raises, or the chance to resist or miss with the spell goes from, what is it, like 5% or so, 5-6% to 17.
Yeah. So
it's kind of similar to that, which makes sense, because otherwise it would be, which made melee completely, brokenly OP, as you all know, on these servers. And casters always had to struggle with certain hit cap.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of like this in a way. It's weird, and it's definitely makes it harder. I think more damage on tanks, harder for melee, but it also evens it out a little bit and makes it more interesting the more Yeah, the harder the better, but like a little bit more tough. More.
I'm all for nerfing melee DPS.
Yeah, of course you are.
I mean, nerfing melee DPS is buffing spellcaster DPS in some roundabout way.
Yes.
Right. You know, we'll see many more Moonkins. I can approve of that. I like those owls.
Oh yeah, definitely.
So, right, you're a Moonkin fan? Good. I like this.
Yeah, I am a Moonkin fan, actually.
Yeah, me too. Me too. I like it. It's just so hard to pull off that, yeah. But I would like to see more of them. Yeah, we got one owl that's actually stacking up all the spell hit. I saw one owl the other day. He was doing really good in damage, and he had completely, he was completely spell hit capped. And then it started to work. So I just wanted to leave that here. But we can let's just talk about Moonkins in one episode. Now I want you to talk about the Shaman Tank. So we all know, if you watch my streams, you saw that I played Prot Paladin from level 1 until max. I think I switched to this warrior here because our main tank situation is just completely stupid, and I just have to take over for the last couple of weeks that this shit here is running. But I played it until Nax and into Nax, and there are a lot of people that try different things out. And I remember on earlier P servers there were like no feral druids to be found, really, just a very few. And now this feral druid has become a much more viable tank nowadays because people just started playing it and starting to fool around with it. So feral and warrior are usually the tanks because they also just have a taunt, let's face it. But so I did what I did with the Prot Paladin thing. Just play it and see how far it can go and what you really need to do to play basically around the fact that you don't have a taunt. Caper is doing this with Shaman Tank, and Paladin and Shamans have this tree, right? This kind of protection tree, but they don't have a taunt. And so people have been theory crafting or talking about this, that this was meant to be a real tank, but they kind of scrapped it. And I think for Prot Paladin, that still works, or is a bit more obvious, let's put it that way. And for the Shaman Tank, it's not as obvious or you have like some relics in the talent tree that kind of suggests that it was meant to be as a tank as well, but it's not as apparent or obvious as for the Prot Paladin. So what are you doing with the Shaman Tank, and why do you think it works, and how do you compare it to other tanks, strengths and weaknesses? You take it away.
Yeah, Shaman Tanks and Prot Paladins are kind of close brothers in terms of that they don't have a taunt. The only difference would be the fact that Paladins have a block ability, but Shaman Tanks don't. However, my kind of go-to when I'm comparing Shaman Tank to any other tank is that if you properly gear a Shaman Tank, you can get very close to the same stats as a Druid tank. Many people don't realize this. This is mainly due to people not putting the effort and just playing something else in the end. But if you try to really, really put in the effort, you will notice that Shaman Tanks can get very high on the rating content ladder. To such a point, I'm known on Chronos for being one of the 3 people who have made it up till AQ and a few bosses into Nax Ramus. Naturally, this demands not only you to be experienced, but also your guild, which I'm sure you're familiar with that Mao playing a Prot Paladin, right?
Yes. I gotta say though, it does get. So my first question would be, can a shaman? I mean, that they can, I know, but like, I noticed in Nax especially, since you don't have a taunt, certain mobs you can't really tank, or somebody else needs to take over. You have like a different role. Is that the same for the Shaman Tank? As a Prot Paladin, I mean. You have like a different role because you can't take any mob that has a hard threat drop or aggro reset. It's just too risky.
So there, you can technically leapfrog threat. Shaman tanks are very good at this because of Earth Shock, which causes twice the damage in threat. So when it comes to leapfrogging threat, we kind of it's kind of a kind of budget taunt, if you will, right?
Yeah, exactly. But that's what I mean.
Shamans have Earth.
I wouldn't put a Shaman tank on something that drops threat, because the risk would be too high for anything shitty to happen, especially in higher raid content. So that's kind of the same as a Prot. You can do it, obviously, if you have the gear, but it's dangerous.
Yeah, it is dangerous. I mean, Prot Paladins have the luxury of being on the Alliance, and they have access to abilities like Blessing of Protection. If you really, really want to go try hard, you can get Light of a Loon. So it's a bit more forgiving on the Alliance side. You guys are very lucky. For a Shaman, you can't really deal with this kind of...
but you have Wind Fury, right? You have Wind Fury.
Pardon?
You have Wind Fury, so that's always nice.
Yeah, that's true. We have Wind Fury.
Okay, then the other thing I wanted to ask was, especially looking at higher tier content, I've noticed that, as I said, some things you just can't really tank reliably, right? And so the most asked question that I noticed for example, for the Prot Paladin was, can it be a main tank? So Prot Paladin, I would always say it can be, but your DPS has to hold off so much that it really doesn't make sense, right? So how's it for Shaman?
So we're a bit more lucky on the Shaman side. I don't know how does a Shaman tank fare against a Prot Paladin using Holy Might Stone, but generally a Shaman tank should do more threat than a Prot Paladin. However, Shaman tanks have more problems with survivability. So we need to focus a bit more on defensive stuff. While Prot Paladin, I think you guys can go like very early into increasing threat, right?
Well, it's also the problem that we have, because the more threat you stack, the squishier you get, obviously. And
Sure, yeah.
I mean, you're still a tank, so your main priority is keeping threat and staying alive. But yeah, it's always the problem that these Prot Pally has, that you have to sacrifice a lot of defensive stats for threat.
Yeah, Shamans are a bit more lucky with Earth Shock. I feel sorry for you guys.
Seems to be pretty good, but I mean, we got the Righteous Fury that just adds a multiplier on everything that's holy damage, so it's not even that bad. But
no, not bad.
The thing is, the numbers just are not very in favor, compared to other classes. If you're looking at what a shield slam does from a warrior, or a feral threat, right? It's just the numbers are already speaking against it, kind of. That's why you could be a main tank, because usually as a main tank you wouldn't have to taunt anything off anyone. It would make sense, but the threat you generate from the spells is just your DPS has to hold off and literally stop. I mean, Necrosh's Warlock, he can tell you all about it. Right.
Now, I've been meaning to ask you, what's your opinion on this whole Holy Shock Prot Paladin, I guess? It's still Prot, this Holy Shock build. What's your opinion on it with leapfrogging threat?
Well, Holy Shock is probably the best taunt you can get, especially in combination with Divine Favor. But the thing is, again, it's the Holy Shock Deep Holy Prot Pally is probably the most or the easiest you can do as a paladin if you're not really doing it in a raid situation, because you're holy anyway and you can just take over. It's basically the most convenient thing back, because you're deep holy anyway for the raids, and you're not really missing out on anything. If you have really good gear, you can go there and you can have a pretty good taunt. The problem is, if you're actually tanking a lot, 20 points in holy should be enough to heal, because as Prot Pally, my opinion is you always have to off heal, because the paladin class is too valuable as a healer, and some things you're just not tanking really. So in that case, you need to heal. It's better than just whacking it with auto attacks. But you're always missing out the Holy Shield, which is essential in pushing off crushing blows. And Holy Shield is actually pretty good because it has 4 charges instead of just 2 for a warrior. So you have that up the whole time with 30% extra. It's not as, not 75% block chance, but less, but longer, and it's essential in pushing off crushing blows. You should be crit immune at some point, but the crushings you can't really avoid. So you need that, especially in higher tier content where stuff just hits hard. The question is, it always depends on the raid composition. Are you tanking so much? Like if you're really tanking a lot of trash, every raid you're tanking, and sometimes you're switching to heal, you should go deep prot. If you have 3 tanks and you're really just sometimes off tanking trash or an ad, you can be deep holy and just go until sank. But if you're taking sank already, you can't be holy shock again. So it's kind of sucks.
Optimally, you would have someone else go Sanctity Aura in your tanking group.
Not Sanctity Aura, I mean the sank buff.
Blessing of
Sanctuary. Yeah. So and that kind of defeats the purpose for me, because then you're really not prot anymore. You're just a holy pally, right? And it's enough to off tank trash if you just switch the gear. Don't get me wrong, it's fine. But my idea was to bring. I would always say the best thing if you want to play Prot Pally is just go 20 points holy. You're absolutely fine. You got illumination, and you just switch the gear. You're absolutely fine. And then the rest you go deep prot. You're great niche AoE off tank. You can take over ads, and you have holy shield. You're crushing. You can get crushing immune, and you have the sync buff for the raid. But we're talking about Shaman Tank, so keep going with what you wanted to say about the Shaman Tank. Introduce.
As you were just mentioning, crushing blows. We don't have a block spell ability, so we most closely associate with feral druids, who get a massive amount of armor in order to reduce the damage from crushing blows. So that's how we deal with it. We get an immense amount of armor, HP, and dodge.
Okay. But I mean, you have a block ability. You can block with a shield.
Yeah,
right?
But you don't have like shield block. Yeah.
You don't have an active shield block that you activate to get more, but you can block, just for people that maybe don't know.
Yeah.
Okay. So you stack a lot of armor and dodge, more avoidance and mitigation kind of type of thing.
Luckily, just like feral druids, agility increases our crit, our dodge, and our armor. So it's pretty cool.
Agility the biz.
What else? Pardon?
Agility is the biz, kind of.
Yeah, it's the best in slot stat. One thing I wanted to mention, we were talking about Wind Fury for a few seconds. Many people don't realize, but Wind Fury at a certain point will cause more threat than Rock Biter. So for people out there thinking Rock Biter is the end-all be-all for a temporary weapon enchantment, it's actually Wind Fury. That will shock a lot of people, but yeah, that's the case.
Okay. So to get started, because I'm not quite sold on the Shaman Tank yet.
Sure, ask questions.
But it's, I would have to see it in practice. So you tanked until Nax.
Yep.
Couple bosses in Nax, actually. Cool. And so what's your niche? What's your role? Because for Prot Pally, it's anything AoE, it's really great. AQ40 trash. I just tank everything. Warriors take care that there's no runners into the raid, and we just AoE everything down. And on a lot of bosses, this is something new, but we could just activate so much AoE potential from the raid. Makes a lot of things really easy, and on the rest, you just step back and heal. So Prot Pally is AoE, great AoE tank, another dude that can switch to tanking gear, and you can switch, you're a full healer in any situation where you're not tanking. And you can wield Nightfall and Annihilator with a really great uptime. So that's the niche for the Prot Pally. What's the Shaman thing? What's going on?
So Shaman tanking niche is single target threat. We're not that good in AoE. It's not impossible, right? There are a few ways you can do it.
No, of course.
Chain lightning and what's it called? Eye of Thunder. I'm blanking on the talent, but yeah, there are ways to AoE tank. It's just a bit harder. We excel more in single target.
Okay, so But why would you take a shaman then over a warrior? Because they are also really good at single target.
Well, I mean, yeah, Shaman Tank will never excel the potential that a warrior tank can do. My point is not to convince people to go Shaman Tank, rather that it's a option when stuff is on farm and you're looking to spice up the game, right? The game is very old. It's been out for quite a long time. For many people, the game is very easy. Shaman Tank kind of offers this difficulty aspect when you're blazing through content, especially with the recent announcement that world buffs will be available upon launch, I think. Yeah. A lot of people are going to be looking to make the game a bit hard.
You mean, what world buffs do you mean? Like Onyxia, etc.?
Yeah, I believe, was it 3 weeks ago? They said world buffs upon launch.
Okay. But the thing is, I heard back in the day or on Classic, you shouldn't be able to spam your Oni heads. There was a 12-hour cooldown. After somebody turned it in, there was a 12-hour cooldown where you could turn in the next. I'm not sure if that's true, but I'm pretty certain that was the case.
Yeah, there's evidence on both sides, so no one really knows.
All right, doesn't matter. But what I saw, if I would, like, as I said, I don't see the Shaman Tank as useful as a Prot Paladin. And a lot of people would say, Prot Paladin is completely fucking useless. And that's all fair. Like, I tried it and it definitely has its flaws where I would say, as you can see, in the end, I'm back to warrior because I need to take over a second main tank because I just don't have a taunt. And this fucking taunt is the make or break and the threat. So I would say shaman a little bit lower than, Prot Pally, or on the same level, kind of. Feral and warrior definitely above it. But what I could see, if I would have to, find some advantages, is I see the strength in switching around, right? Having options, because if you're taking 4 Prot warriors, the 4th Prot warrior is just going to be very sad, not getting gear. He still has to be in a Prot spec. You could say, okay, we'll just take a Fury, but it's gonna be shit. Because he doesn't deal any damage, and whenever he's not tanking, he's not really doing anything. So you could say, okay, we have a Prot Pally there that is a full healer, right? And he can switch to whatever is needed flexibly. And I see the same strength in a shaman, for example. Like you can be isn't there like a DPS spec or a spec where you can be a DPS shaman melee?
Yep.
And you can throw on tanking gear and take over whenever, because oftentimes you have a lot of ads in a raid. And if you can just take one, like the skull or so, the first target, you just take that. It makes it easier, especially next, so much trash.
Yeah.
And you can wield a Nightfall, right?
Yeah, there are advantages to shaman. For example, there is the elemental warding. So shamans are a bit better on bosses that deal magical damage. So, but there are kind of benefits to shaman tanking that a lot of people don't realize. Yeah,
just go into more detail. Like what makes great? Like what have you been doing in raids? Really, that's interesting to me because
so when I'm not trying to leapfrog threat, usually I equip a Nightfall and help the casters increase their DPS. If in a scenario there are not that many casters in the raid composition, I would equip Annihilator. Yeah. So we're not just looking at pure tanking, we're also looking to help others out. Right? You don't want to be that obnoxious guy that doesn't help anyone else, right? You're already playing something that's very niche. You don't want to put on a negative stigma towards the class or spec you're playing. So be considerate to others, essentially.
Exactly. That's what I always try to tell reds as well, right? Like if you're fresh red, the first thing you should get is a fucking Annihilator, because that makes you actually useful for somebody, if anything. But if you're that red pally that just comes with his weird blue weapon and refuses to equip a Nightfall, it's tough. Tough life.
Yeah, there is this kind of persuasion tactic you can do as a red paladin, right? You come into a guild, you help other people out, you gather some DKP, you establish a good reputation with the guild, and eventually you transition into pure red DPS. But only only after you convinced people that you're a beneficial asset to the guild, right?
Absolutely, yeah. So you said the spell warding. So I always thought Shaman tanks have like are really good spell damage tanks. That's what I thought. Tanks you put on spell damage, but I don't know where that came from. But I don't think it's really true. What do they gear? Like, is there any like really cool items that shamans can or use that really changes the gameplay? Because for example, for Prot Paladin, you have the Wrath of Scenarios that increases your spell damage on a harmful spell that you cause, and your Consecration ticks. Every single tick counts as a landing spell. So you have that. It's just huge. You have 130 spell damage up all the time. Are there any like cool items for Shaman tanks that you could think of?
Yeah.
What have you been doing in raids? Just give us a little rundown. Experience, stories. Yeah.
Stories. So I'll tell you the most interesting thing about Shaman tanking. We take a lot of benefit from the Stormcaller tier set. We kind of, how would I say this? We kind of weave.
Is that tier 2?
It's the AQ set.
AQ. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so within Shaman tanking, there's kind of this mini game where you kind of try to predict when the Stormcaller tier set will proc, and it's very hard pounding, right? It's a very engaging rotation that Shaman tank has to do in order to keep up threat with a Fury Warrior, for example. Mm-hmm. I don't know if it's the same thing with Prot Paladin.
I don't know what's the proc on the set. Maybe for us it's always really obvious what we're talking about, but for example, for Shaman tank, I don't know what that set bonus is doing. So you gotta sell it to me a little bit.
Sorry, yeah. So yeah, the Stormcaller set is basically your Lightning Bolt, Chain Lightning, and Shocks have a 20% chance to grant up to 50 nature damage to spells for 8 seconds. So this is a big boost in terms of Earth Shock threat.
Yeah. And that's your main threat source, the Earth Shock.
Yeah. The Stormcaller set is our best in slot. It not only takes care of survivability, but also threat.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's the same for Prot Paladin. Like the AQ set then surpasses Deathbone set when you can get it, because the 5-set bonus is just flat 71 spell damage, and more armor, agility, stamina, int, everything is on there, right? So it's just better than playing defense.
Yeah, it takes advantage of what's it called, Mark of the Wild.
Everything. Kings and just all the armor values are so much higher than that. It just outscales it by far.
Yeah, if you break down the math, it's better.
Okay, so Shaman tank. So what would you you can probably send me a spec later, right? I'll just put it in the video because I got space here. I'll put it in there. You guys can see it then. So how do you spec? Talent trees are always interesting to people. So why don't you go through the spec, and I'll put it in the video.
Okay, I'll provide you with the highest dealing threat talent build.
Mm-hmm.
Let me just bring So the highest threat you can do on a Shaman tank, most people might think it's going Stormstrike, but in reality, it's putting points into 30 points into enhancement and 21 points into elemental until Elemental Fury, because Elemental Fury is absolutely amazing for the Shaman class in general. Not to mention it scales with Earth Shock. So yeah, we're looking at 21 points in elemental and 30 points in enhancement.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so you don't even pick up the Stormstrike, or?
No, you don't. For many reasons. It takes up a debuff slot.
True. Yeah.
Does it reset swing timer? I abandoned Stormstrike such a long time ago.
Okay, it's interesting. For example, I would have thought that obviously you take the Stormstrike, the ultimate, as a Shaman tank.
No, you don't. You go for Stormstrike in early content, right? When you're doing 5-man or multi-core, yes. But looking into AQ, Nax, you're leaning more towards elemental.
I see. Okay, then give us the rundown on what do we go into in the elemental tree.
So yeah, you put points until... Oh, so I'll start from the top.
Yeah, start from the top.
So you put 5 points in concussion.
Concussion, yeah. More
that
damage.
You to access. Pardon?
More damage from the shocks,
yeah,
more
damage,
threat. Yeah.
That enables the second tier, where you put 3 points in elemental warding.
Mm-hmm.
After that, you put points in convection. It's always good to save on mana. This opens up the third line of talents, where you put points in reverberation and a talent point in elemental focus. After that, you put 3 points in elemental devastation, which is always up. Most people think elemental devastation is not a consistent buff, but in reality, it really is. Just because of the amount of intellect we have on most of our gear, this is always active. And then you put the last point in elemental fury.
Last point. So I got... Do you go into Call of Thunder or Eye of the Storm or anything? Or just convection for the fill-up points? Eye
of the Storm is uniquely for AoE tanking. Let me double check. Yeah, it's uniquely for AoE tanking.
Right, yeah. Okay, and then Elemental Fury, which increases the critical strike damage bonus of, spells, basically, by 100%, which is big for threat, obviously. Yeah, and just so you can say something to explain it to people that don't know this, because this is definitely very new to a lot of people. So concussion, 5% more damage to shocks and everything, more threat, makes sense. Convection, 6% less mana for your shocks and lightning spells. Elemental warding makes you take 10% less Frostfire nature damage, which is pretty cool. That's what I think. That's why I thought the spell damage tank, as 10% less spell damage taken is pretty cool. Elemental focus, why that? Seemed like a caster talent.
Yeah, same reason. Enables you to save mana. Technically, there is the ultimate try hard, where you put points in Call of Flame instead of convection, and instead of convection, you put points in Call of Flame. So Call of Flame increases the damage done by your fire totems. The more damage your fire totems do, the faster you kill the boss. The faster you kill the boss, the less you have to heal the Shaman Tank. That's the ultimate tryhard that I don't even go.
Okay. So Elemental Focus, whenever you cast something, you have a 10% chance to get it free on the next, if you cast on the next. Then we got Reverberation, 1 second off your cooldown on the shocks. So I would have thought, right? 5 points for 1 second, is that worth it?
Yes, it is, especially if you have Fury Warrior DPS.
Yeah.
In your raid composition, you need reverberation. I've done the math, and that 1 second really matters, especially when you have a DPS warrior that's just refusing to slow down on their threat. Right? They're not popping their limited invulnerability potion, and they're completely ignoring everyone on Discord. You need that.
Well, like Fury Warriors do, like all of them. They're all the same, right? We all. Okay, and then Elemental Devastation. So anytime you get a spell crit, you get 10% melee crit, 9% melee crit. That's pretty big. I mean, I can see
Elemental Devastation synergizes with Flurry. So, right, you have faster attack speed. The faster you attack, the faster you have a chance to proc crit. You have
spell
quite
crits.
A few.
How do you proc the spell crits from melee attacks?
No, so everything synergizes. So the crit part of Elemental Devastation synergizes with the Flurry, the 3 strings after dealing a critical strike. So yeah. You can technically, if you do things properly, you can always have Flurry and Elemental Devastation active on your buff bar.
Okay, yeah, I see. Okay, so, but it's not like your auto attacks proc anything spell crit. Like they don't have those.
No. Okay. The other way around. Yeah.
Okay. I see. Yeah, it's pretty crazy. True. That does seem pretty cool. The thing is, then with Elemental Fury, anything spell crit you do has 100% bonus. Seems cool. I can see this side. Now let's go into the enhancement tree and see what we can do there. What would you spec?
So yeah, depending on how proficient you are with Shaman Tank, if you're very new to Shaman Tanking, I would suggest putting points in shield specialization.
Yeah.
If you are a veteran of World of Warcraft or you've played for quite a while, you can instead put points in ancestral knowledge, which increases your maximum mana by 5%. We always like saving mana here and there, right? It helps.
Let's stay with this shield specialization because I think a lot of new people are watching this if they're interested at all. One thing I want to say, this like tier 1 talent and enhancement is actually pretty strong. 5% chance to block is one thing, but increases the amount blocked by 25. That's actually a very underrated thing. Talents like this, the Prot Paladin has this too, where you just take your block value and you increase it by a percentage. It really does mitigate a lot of damage. Warriors don't have this, so this is pretty cool.
Yeah, unfortunately, Shaman Tanks don't have this block value priority. A lot of the block value gear is not really beneficial to Shaman Tanks. So
okay. I see. Okay, well, for Prot Paladin, it's like the thing. Right?
Yeah,
you mitigate, you threat, constant threat. Okay, so shield specialization at the start, and if you want to be a little bit more crazy, you can go ancestral knowledge.
Once you progress on the rating content ladder and your guild is accustomed to Shaman Tanking, you can put points in ancestral knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, moving on, you want to put 5 points in Thundering Strikes, which increases your critical strike.
Mm-hmm.
As I previously stated, this is also good with Flurry and synergizes well with Elemental Devastation. So
yes,
it's very, very interesting. Afterwards, you put 5 points in Anticipation, which increases your dodge. As a tank, you want dodge.
5% dodge. Yeah.
Afterwards, you put 5 points in Flurry. We already talked about that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
5 points in...
increases your attack speed by 30% for next 3 swings after you get a crit, which is a lot of threat, obviously. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Flurry will always be active. Yeah. Afterwards, you're putting 5 points in Toughness, which increases your armor value from items by 10%.
Must have.
Pardon?
Must have talents.
Yeah, must have talents. On some servers, Toughness scales with enchants and a few world buffs. So on a few servers, this allows Shaman Tanks to fully clear Nax Ramus. Now, these are special case scenarios. This is only possible on a few servers.
It shouldn't, though.
No,
but it's still a must-have talent because until you are at an armor cap, this will always help you, and until you're at 10k armor, it's just a very good talent. The mitigation from armor is very underrated as well, I want to say. So yeah, people tend to forget about the armor, actually.
Yep. Afterwards, you put 3 points in Elemental Weapons, which increases your Wind Fury weapon effect by 40%. If you are still early on the rating content ladder, you're looking at imbuing your weapon with Rockbiter instead. I believe the DPS distinction between Rockbiter and Wind Fury is 170, I want to say. So once you start doing 170 DPS with your main hand weapon, you're looking to transition into Wind Fury. So yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Afterwards, you put the point in Parry.
Yes.
You like Parry. I'm sure you Prot Paladins like it too.
Yes, of course. Who doesn't?
And the last point is in Weapon Mastery. You just put 1 point in there.
Weapon Mastery, 1 point.
Yeah, 1 point.
Okay, I see. So this is already very different from what I would have thought Shaman Tank specs. Interesting.
Yeah,
right, so
this is...
But you don't have two-handed axes then.
Pardon?
You can also put 1 point into two-handed axes.
Yeah, you can. That's true. If you want to play more off-tank / support, yeah, you're looking to get the two-hand talent to equip Nightfall and help casters. This is the optimal talent build for causing as much threat as possible
Right. Yeah. Okay, cool. So yeah, I'll have that in the video, and that's pretty interesting. So what you can see is how do you cause your threat then? So what's your rotation? What do you start with?
Our rotation is actually quite complicated.
I think that's very interesting to a lot of people that we should talk about.
All right, so
just like roughly, what are your things? What are you doing as a Shaman Tank?
Roughly, we're looking to cast Earth Shock, maximum Earth Shock rank each time it's available.
Mm-hmm.
We're looking to activate Oil of Immolation, constantly active. We're also looking to use Goblin Sapper Charge, use Major Rejuvenation Potion. Many people don't realize that you gain threat not only from the mana it replenishes, but also the HP. So that's one way we cause threat. We also cause threat through reflective buffs, whether it be Thorns, Fire Shield, Crystal Spire,
yes,
and Static Barrier, which is a buff that originates from Electromagnetic Gigaflux Reactivator.
Oh, the No More Again head. Yeah.
I see a lot of tanks not get this. I don't know why. I see very reputable warrior tanks not do this.
Well, because it's just so. Yeah, I can see why they don't fucking bother with it, but it's annoying. But and backspace, and all these kind of things. But yeah, if you want to maximize, get the No More Again head. It provides you with a reflective buff. I think it's 5 damage.
And I believe for Prot Paladins, it is the pull mechanic for a boss. Am I correct? Or do you use a candle?
Well, I personally don't really pull any bosses, right? Like we go in and we all go in together, so it's not a big problem. Or we just utilize a hunter, or I pick something up. That's not such a big problem to pull. I get my target. I just walk in and you just judge, and it's fine. But yeah.
Yeah, you could pull the head is very much a key part of AoE tanking for a Shaman Tank because it pulls every target in a cone in front of you. So we like that a lot as a Shaman Tank. Not only can we pull with Chain Lightning, which bounces from one target to another, but we also have this head slot item.
Right. Yeah. So No More Again end boss is where you get this.
Yep.
Okay. So Earth Shock uptime. As many as you can. Then reflective buffs. You need a lot of consumables for this, of course. So all of this being said, that's why I always I'm getting really tired of spamming so many consumables just to make something work. That's me personally. That's what I noticed for Prot Paladin. But that's just how it is, right? It's like playing a Red Paladin. It's like playing anything that is not like the most obvious DPS class or tank class. You need to spam a lot of stuff. So Earthshock is the key part, and Wind Fury procs, I guess.
Yeah. One thing I want to point out is a lot of people will say, what about mana? So going out of mana in World of Warcraft in general is a very outdated notion. If you properly use your consumes, you should not be having mana problems, especially as a Prot Paladin. I believe you guys have a Seal of Wisdom, right?
Yeah, you judge wisdom on everything basically, and then you just whack it. But I mean, you still run out of mana. With raid buffs, it's not as big of a problem, but you do really drain your mana quick still, as properly. But you should be spamming mana potions, obviously, to make it work.
Yeah, it's just not to the extent that people say, right?
Yeah, it's not like you drain yourself out of mana and then you just stand there and don't know what to do because there's no way you can get mana back. That's not the case. I mean, with all the raid buffs, you already have so much MP5, which is also part of gearing a properly, but you should always have a lot of mana potions, and they're really not that expensive, and you should spam them. No. Yeah. Okay, then I think we have the talent tree. We have it basically comes down to spamming Earthshock.
Yes. Typically, if you're not that well geared, you're looking at down-ranking Earthshock. I suggest if you're playing a Shaman Tank to install the threat add-on KTM. KTM, to properly estimate what kind of Earthshock you should use, right? You don't want to be the kind of Shaman Tank that goes max rank. You want to kind of gauge your remaining mana and approach the situation adequately.
Okay, so downranking is also a thing.
Pardon?
Downranking is also a thing for Shaman Tank, yeah. Okay, that's interesting because it's a big thing for Prot Paladin as well, which is also goes against the going out of mana thing. Interesting. So, can you give us to close the topic off? Like, what are like key items people should get?
Key items.
Yeah,
so
key item, maybe
I suggest for raid members to acquire the item Limited Invulnerability Potion, which, as of saying this, removes the DPS user from the threat table, I believe, and also has a aggro reassignment effect. So DPS members should have this if a Shaman Tank is tanking. In terms of the Shaman Tank himself, I definitely suggest getting the head slot item Electromagnetic Gigaflux Reactivator, as well as getting the reflective buffs out there, whether it be Thorns or Fire Shield. There's really no excuse why you shouldn't have these buffs. You should always have in your inventory Major Health Stone, the improved talent version from Warlocks. A lot of people don't realize this, but there are two potion cooldowns. So potions share certain cooldowns with other stuff. You want to try and not how should I say this? You should know the potion cooldown differentiation. So that's a big one that people need to adjust to.
Okay.
If you're looking to top off threat, I suggest Goblin Sapper Charge from Engineering. Most people agree that engineering is a late game profession. You build up to engineering. You don't start off straight out as engineering. Maybe you want to go herbalism, alchemy, gather the money, then switch to engineering, then start making Goblin Sapper Charge.
Right. Yeah. In terms of
okay, go
ahead. No, go ahead.
So yeah, you're also looking to get Oil of Immolation. On some servers, it does reset your swank timer. So it's a bit of a
We're looking at the official, so we don't know that really.
Yeah.
No. Anything like that. It's like sitting down as a Prot Paladin. It's, I don't even factor that in anymore. I didn't even take Redoubt and Reckoning anymore because it's not going to work on official, and I wanted to be as close to it. But in terms of like gearing, is there any items you could recommend that are really strong, like actual gear? Must-have items. Yeah. Shields, anything. What stats do you prioritize as Shaman, that people have like kind of a orientation?
Just like every other tank, you're looking to tailor your gear setup in accordance with the boss you're facing. So if you're going against a boss that deals a lot of physical damage, you're looking to prioritize armor above everything else. If you're looking at a boss that deals mostly magic damage, you're looking to focus more on stamina. So you do tailor your gear a bit more than I believe warrior would. Not to say that it's easy for warriors, but we really need to pay attention to the gear we have on. We're just about to approach the boss. Yeah. In terms of shield, our kind of best in slot shield that causes the most threat is Skullflame Shield. So Skullflame Shield, for the people that don't know, scales with spell damage on top of scaling with debuffs such as Shadow Weaving and the curses. So I think it's the same thing for Prot Paladin. Am I correct?
No, not really.
No,
but that's because the thing for Prot Paladin is you just cause so much more threat when you're blocking compared to that little proc that can happen. To be fair, it's really good proc from the Skullflame Shield, but it's just not as important because you have so many more shields that have a lot of block chance on top of each other, on top of the shield, and defense and more armor and everything else. That just outweighs it a little bit because as soon as you get your holy shield up, you block and cause threat as it is. It's still good as a starting shield for AoE situations, but yeah.
Yeah. For us, it's quite weird that it's our best in slot threat shield, level 54 item.
Yeah, as it is sometimes, right? So the shield, Skullflame Shield is the biz.
Yeah,
you could say
biz for threat.
Right.
For threat, should point that out.
Exactly,
for survival, I believe it's Face of Death. Let me double check.
Well, something with defensive stats. What about block value? You said your shaman shouldn't go so much for block value.
No,
correct?
We don't go for block value.
Chance, block value.
Just because the gear doesn't really suit us. We would lose too much in threat.
Mm-hmm. So, what do you focus on? Agility, you said, is big. Agility and dodge, because obviously shamans can only wear mail, so you're already below in armor. So armor, agility, dodge, you said is quite important.
That would be the kind of stat priority.
Mm-hmm. And then what about strength? Is that any value?
No. Strength is not good at us. Not good for us at all.
Yeah, because it would increase the block value and just the melee attacks a little bit.
Yeah.
What about spell damage?
Yeah. Spell damage. So spell damage on the Shaman Tank is very much a luxury that you get in late game. In the early game, you don't really prioritize it.
Mm-hmm.
But in the late game, you do to keep up with threat.
Right. So kind of similar to Prot Paladin. When you can get it, it's very strong, but first don't die, right? So,
yeah.
Okay.
Like I mentioned before, spell damage scales with Skullflame Shield. There's a lot of synergy within the Shaman Tank, which I believe is the same thing for Prot.
Yeah, of course. It's still good, but I can see why it's even better for Shaman. Why it outweighs anything threat-wise. So stat priority, I can see agility being on the very top. Is that correct? Because you can get flurry uptime, you can get crit, you can get dodge, armor.
Yes. I go through all the mind-numbing math on my guide. How I break down everything to its core essentials, and agility, very much best in slot.
Good. Okay, this is interesting. And so what is your as maybe a closing question, because otherwise it will get way too long. This is so in depth. I recommend you go check the guides out, especially also for the Warlock Tank. We can talk about it just a tiny little bit after this. But I really suggest you go and check the guides out. I'll link them and you can send them to me. So what I would need from you is like the tank spec, and then maybe one where you can utilize Storm Strike or something for people that want to be just an off tank. And then I'll link to your guides so you guys can actually go and check that out if you are interested in it. Because it's so in depth, we could talk for hours, but it would just get way too long. As a closing question, what are you doing in raids? What's your role? Right? Are you usually an off tank for an ad? Do you tank bosses? And do you feel it's a rewarding playstyle?
I mean, I do whatever the guild needs, right? Last thing I want to be is an obnoxious person always wanting to main tank, right?
Yeah.
I'll do whatever the guild wants. I have to admit, the Shaman Tank rotation is very much exhilarating as you try to pay attention to your threat, your mana, your HP. It's a very engaging rotation, as is Prot Paladin, I believe.
Yes.
So, if you're looking to reinvigorate yourself with that kind of hard nostalgia that you experienced in original World of Warcraft, I highly suggest Shaman Tank. However, disclaimer, you have to be already experienced in World of Warcraft in order to either start leveling a shaman or go straight to shaman tanking. What I usually tell people is to wait 2 to 3 to even 4 weeks after a boss has been cleared. So this gives you ample time for the guild to get accustomed to a shaman tanking, to get the proper gear. I don't suggest shaman tanking straight from the get-go or progressioning.
Mm-hmm. So it's not a beginner's tank. People ask the same.
No.
How good
really
is the
need to.
Yeah? How good is the Prot Paladin in tanking? And I say, man, like if you're new to Classic, don't play it. There's no reason. You're just gonna have a bad time, really. And I mean, you can absolutely do it, but it's for people that are looking for something new or have already tanked somewhere. Like if you're completely new to tanking, do not touch this. I would recommend just going warrior feral.
Massive disclaimers in my guide where I suggest to start off maybe as a resto shaman or even level an entirely different class to get accustomed to the PvE scenario, like mage, for example.
Yeah, or just as I said, it's not a beginner's tank. Same for Prot Paladin, and I would really not recommend that as a beginner. because it just requires you to already know a lot of mechanics, and then you can try to make the same happen. So you're saying it's a rewarding playstyle? I gotta say, Prot Paladin is a lot of fun to play because just the tanking is very rewarding. Like this AoE niche thing, and you're just causing so much threat while you're blocking, and the AoE thing and everything. And whenever you're not tanking, you're a healer, which is you're basically 2 useful roles in one. So it's really cool.
Another appealing aspect about Shaman tanking is the fact that you're integrating melee and spells. So it's kind of this really neat fantasy where you feel like a caster and you feel like a melee damage all rolled up into one.
Right. Yeah.
Just a quick thing about the Prot Paladin, because I joined when you did the Prot Paladin, and I thought it was really stupid.
Yes, of course.
And because I was a priest, so I'm gonna keep your ass alive, and it worked pretty well. You were quite easy to heal, and what was so wonderful was the AoE threat.
Yes.
Because I would die so many times because of the AoE. Because heal, you do threat on everything when you heal. So like on Fangchris and the stupid tunnel, you just get threat from everything and you just die. But with the Paladin tank, like that's not an issue anymore.
Yeah, it worked better than we expected.
It really
gotta
did.
Say that too. Yeah.
Even in Axe, it worked.
Yeah, even in Axe. Yeah, I would continue in Axe. There's definitely room. You can go all the way through Axe, I'm very sure. But you're just always an off tank, and I think maybe the same counts for Shaman Tank. Would you say that? It's more of an off tank.
I mean, you would start as an off tank and then make your way to main tank once you get proper gear. But yeah, you can main tank as a shaman. Speaking of AoE, so shamans deal with AoE by having the weapon Hand of Edward the Odd, which allows you to cast a spell instantly. Once Hand of Edward procs, you want to be casting Chain Lightning. And this is our kind of main conduit for dealing AoE damage.
Okay, yeah, I see. Yeah, the idea, some people think that for the Prot Paladin you can also use that one. The thing is, when it procs, what are you going to do with it, right? You can really see when it's going to proc, so you will never really have it. The idea is to get a flash of light in or a holy light, but if you do that, you just completely it's not practical. It's just the idea behind that is good, but it's not really practical. And you have such good weapon opportunity possible stat sticks, with huge amounts of spell damage and stamina and int and MP5 on it. It's not really worth the sacrifice.
For AoE shaman tanking, Hand of Edward the Odd is very much an appealing weapon because we have a very fast attack speed due to flurry. So the proc chance is very high.
True. Yeah, absolutely. My fear would just be that I'm completely drained of mana but maybe that's different. So I would actually disagree with main tanking shaman even. I think it would be just forcing too much on the raid. Holding back in DPS. I think still like a feral and warrior would be outscaling you in both survivability and threat.
So yeah, the big difference between viable and optimal.
Yes, exactly. That's what I meant. So
yeah, you go warrior. But if you're looking to go push a record, a world achievement, you're looking to bring in the shaman tank just as a kind of wow factor.
Right. That's not what. Yeah, okay. So like in terms of practicality, I would say you can definitely main tank as a Prot Paladin. Question is, how much sense does that make, really? And so I said, for normal raiding environments, if you can actually play Prot Paladin, you're an off tank and great healer. You're a full healer and you're a great AoE off tank, niche tank. Whenever needed, you can switch around. So that's the strength, right? The versatility of it. And I would see the same for the shaman.
Except it would be single target instead of AoE.
And single target threat is, of course, like the thing.
Insane.
Yeah. Cool, man. So if you want to know more about the Shaman Tank, you should definitely check out the guide. As Necros said, he read the guide of Caper for the Warlock Tank before he knew it was him. Yeah, cool. So you would recommend And
definitely check that out, because and I tried it myself a few times with the Warlock Tank, and it is a pretty interesting experience. I've only done it with like Stratholme, Skolo, and AQ20, but you can take it further than that. I've even seen Priest's Tank.
Oh, I can get into that if you guys want.
Yeah, we'll touch on that subject a little bit, because we can jump back in it maybe in another episode. I don't mind. But I just need to go and take a leak really, really badly, and then we'll take a short break and be right back with a little honorable mention of the Warlock Tank, and then we might pick up on that in another episode. So be right back, and then Warlock Tank. More crazy stuff. This video is brought to you by Noisebird Media. If you are looking to enhance your business with fresh and exciting marketing ideas, feel free to surf over to www.noisebirdmedia.com. Noisebird Media specializes in video production such as documentary or image films for businesses or content creation for social media channels, as well as social media management and product videos and photos. Visit us on our website to get in touch and claim a free first meeting with the team about your business's needs. All right, guys. Then for the last part of the show, we'll actually jump into the Warlock Tank that Caper also read a guide about. You can go and check that out. But as I already heard when we were taking a small break, this relies a lot on buffs, and once you die, once those buffs are gone, and it doesn't really work anymore. But give us or maybe Necrosh can talk a little bit. You tried this out, his guide. What did you think? What it's for, and what is it?
Yes. So I mostly tried it out in 5-mans and AQ20. And it works pretty good, because you have really good threat as Warlock. I mean, it's our biggest problem. So we have the threat part covered pretty easily. And you may think like, oh, you're a clothy, how the hell can you tank? Well, you got a lot of neat buffs as a Warlock. The survivability of the Warlock is just extreme. And then you combine that with some pretty serious buffs, which means you can actually get like 10k armor quite easy. I mean, no stretch. And you, with some clever buff usage, you can go beyond that to like 12, 13k if you're really pushing it. And that's
pretty crazy already.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy for a clothy. And on part of that, or on top of that, you also get the 10% physical damage reduction from Master Demonologist, and 30% of your damage taken is thrown to the Voidwalker, which means you can have like a regrowth, renew, rejuve just ticking on the Voidwalker, and that's enough to keep the 30% alive. And that makes you much easier to heal, because you're taking less damage, so the damage is not so spiky as it might be on like a Foul Druid, for instance.
Right, so you'd have so you'd have like a sponge, more consistent damage coming in. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. Because you can't block, you can't dodge, of course, but you know.
Yeah, that's what I thought always. Yeah, I mean, obviously, Caper, you already said this is more of a thing to spice something up for a guild that has something on farm. We're not serious about you shouldn't play Warlock Tank, you know. And like, yeah, I'm Warlock Tank, guys. Can I be main tank? It's to experiment a bit for guilds that have something on farm.
Yeah, obviously don't do this for progression. Yeah. Do this when your guild has nothing better to do.
Yeah, that's we need to say this, because usually people are just, you guys are stupid. Warlock Tank doesn't work. Yeah, we know. And like this is all just experimental stuff, and we just think it's fun. So so the threat part is covered. Warlocks just have immense and crazy threat. That's obviously clearly the case. But how do you get to the armor? Like 12k armor? I'm not even there with my warrior yet. So for anyone that doesn't know, every 5,000 armor, there's a little bit of diminishing return, taking away the effectiveness of armor, and 10k is like a really good spot to aim for. So how do you get to the 10k armor as a Warlock, as a cloth wearer?
So we get to the 10k through proper gearing, honestly, right? We favor armor above everything else, because armor reduces physical damage, right? Agility as well reduces through armor as well, reduces physical damage. So we very much like armor and agility. Honestly, through proper gearing and getting the proper buffs out there, it's quite easy to get 10k. Technically, you can get even higher than 10k through Zendalarian Hero Badge, which increases your armor by 2,000. Many people don't know this, but Zendalarian Hero Badge is a pre-activatable item. You can technically pop this item before you pull the boss, and you don't need to have the trinket constantly equipped. You get 2,000 passive armor.
Is that so? I mean, is that supposed to be like that for official? It's a question.
I have no idea.
Yeah.
Another pre-activable item that people don't really realize is Petrified Scarab, which increases your spell resistance by 100. That's another big one.
Yeah, so from IQ.
We can deal a bit better with magic dealing bosses.
Right. Yeah. How far can you go? Go ahead.
The primary use for the Warlock Tank is Twin Emperors. But I feel like you can apply that sort of tank to many other bosses. I've been dying to do a Ragnaros tank, because if you like Ragnaros' main target has threat and it's not in melee range, he spams the fire thing on him, I think. And what if you equipped fire resistance gear on a Warlock and just, kept the threat on them that way?
I think the problem with Ragnaros is when there's nothing in melee range, he just switches targets and pushes out fire hits.
But isn't it on his main target?
No. If there's nothing in melee range, I believe he switches around and just...
Careful, it depends on the server.
Yeah, of course, but that's how it's supposed to be. So that doesn't look... Sadly, that doesn't work. A good idea, though. I mean, it's an interesting thought of... When you never thought about it before, maybe there's a couple of things that you could technically apply that to, because if you're taking into consideration precasting, for example, I'm just thinking of stuff like Major Domo, so where you could just have Skull untanked and you get down, and with one Warlock without salvation, just taking over the lead. Or
that's something you do, by the way, as a Warlock Tank. You switch your gear after you cast your spell.
Yes.
So you equip your spell damage gear, and you fire off a Soulfire, and then while the thing is in the air, you switch to your tank gear.
Right, because what I can think of is some next things like Ferlina, like the skull. You need to kill a couple of ads. And you don't really want to sacrifice a whole tank for it. So you could technically put a Warlock on there that doesn't instantly die. But the question is always, the DPS you sacrifice for having that guy on that tank for that short period, is that maybe, how you actually, is it worth?
You can probably do it just as an MD lock. Like if you do MD, Master Demonologist, that means you get 10% reduction in physical damage from your Voidwalker.
Okay,
and so you do that, and then you could probably survive. And then once the ad is dead, you just get rid of the Voidwalker, put from a Succubus, and DSF for 15% shadow damage, and then you just continue your rotation as normal. Of course, you have to gear a bit more armor, but with using Stone Shield potions and shit, I don't think it will be that necessary. Yeah, I think it could be actually be doable.
Yeah, at a certain point in Warlock tanking, you've achieved such good survivability that you can technically talent exactly the same talent points as a DPS Warlock. So if you're looking to cause the most threat possible, you're looking to talent exactly as a DPS Warlock.
Yeah. And
this is kind of a
then it becomes
scenario.
Interesting.
Yeah, you need a few things. For example, Bag of Marbles, which reduces the target's chance to hit by 25%. On top of that, you need Moldar's Moxie on you as a buff. You need the Lay on Hands buff. You need quite a few things.
Okay. So yeah, that's what you meant with you need a lot of buffs to make it work.
Yeah.
All right.
But, really helps.
Yeah. I mean, I'm just trying to think right now. We can think about this until next time, and maybe we will get, or we'll have some ideas of where you could actually apply a ranged tank, or just a spell damage Warlock Tank. I'm just for the fun, really. I'm just gonna try and think of some things, and unless you know some right now off the top.
Well, the most obvious, of course, Twin Emperors and
Twin Emperors, of course. That's like the normal thing, right?
And the bug in AQ20, the flying thing.
The flying thing, yeah. IMS.
Yeah, IMS. Yeah, you tank her as a Warlock as well.
And what about Hooran? Hooran is always a good example. The later you get your actual tanks on, the fresher they are for the enrage, the better. So anything that can tank before that with massive threat is always good. I mean, with a Warlock tank on Hooran, you could probably, the threat should be so crazy that you could already start nuking very hard and get the boss down quick.
You can trivialize. You can trivialize Hooran to like an insane extent by activating non-class pets. So Hooran shoots poison stings, and the poison stings hit the combat pets. So you can save a lot on survivability there and go mainly for threat.
Yeah, that's true.
So Hooran is very easy, actually.
Yeah, true. It's a Prot Paladin boss, right? We always send me as first, and then you just go until 30%. I just usually live until 50, where it just bubble all the stacks off, and one tank takes over. And in between, you can just still use Stone Form, all of these things, and it's just crazy easy. And then everybody pops the Bar of Trinkets, and boom. You can make it really easy, and that way our actual tanks, like our main tanks, stay fresh for the enrage, where there's a lot of damage, and then there's no damage on the tank, and you can just see the melee. A lot of things you can do, as you can see. So we don't want to drag this on for too much, for much longer, but. These experimental things have always have a lot of cool things you can, if you think about it a bit more or a bit further, then you realize, okay, maybe I could use this here or try this out here. And we're definitely going to do this before the official hits. So I always find this very interesting. Some people just hate this, right? They just want the meta. This is the best and this is the best, and they want to play that. I understand that, but I feel like there's enough things and content for that out there anyway, so why not talk about something fresh?
Yep.
We need to come to an end though. So any last words, Caper?
Any last words? So not many people realize this, but there are way more classes that can actually tank. I don't want to make a blanket statement, but nearly every class can tank, with the exception of mages. I cover all these kind of weird French tank classes in my guides and on my YouTube channel, youtube.com. Just type in Caperfin. You will see tons of my guides where I explore the weird and strange stuff and mysteries in World of Warcraft. Yeah,
go check that out, because we all know the Discipline Priest was meant as a melee class, right? Oh man, Hunter tanks. I've had forget about it, man. We can talk about that in another episode. Rogue tank, Hunter tank. It's interesting. We can talk about it. You can explain to us, like, maybe a little bit quicker and not so in depth, but like what the idea behind that is. For now, thanks for being here, man. That was it's pretty cool. I think people can try this out, the Shaman Tank. Thanks for the insight, and I think people should go and check the guides out if they want the in-depth thing. But this is kind of like a cool thing to spark the interest. Necrush was also here. Thanks.
Yeah.
For the Warlock Tank, we can talk about it next time. You get more time to talk, obviously. But I think for now, this wraps it up. If you guys want to say anything else, say goodbye.
I just want to say thanks for having me, guys. It was an absolute blast. I learned quite a few things about Prot Paladin that I didn't know, so I might make a Prot Paladin guide in the future.
Do it. I'll make one already, but
I will credit you. I will credit you.
Try it. It's your brain will just explode because it's just annoying.
I've seen some insane threat with Holy Might Stone and pushing even in progressions.
Yeah. The problem is always with items. If you're using too many things that you can have as unique items, or too many buffs, special buffs you need, it doesn't really become practical anymore. We talked about this before. For me, it's got to be somewhat working out perfectly in a normal raid environment. If you need too much crazy stuff to make it work, it's not really a deal for me anymore. But yeah, I think it was a lot of fun. We can talk about more in the future, more stuff. So for now, I'd say we retire and get this video up there. And I thank everybody for watching. Go check out Caperfin. And before we forget, if you're looking for a guild for EU and English-speaking servers, you can still hit us up. Just join our Discord server to see where we're going to go and get in touch there. So we're recruiting all classes. And I want to thank everybody for watching. Go check Caperfin's channel. And if you like, vote the video up. It really does help us. Leave a sub, consider a sub. And check out our streams. Caperfin also streams. So I stream, he streams. Necrosh sometimes streams. So if you guys like, go and check that out. And for now, I'd say thank you very much for watching. I wish you pleasant and epic loots. And I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.